you want to sing Here Comes the Sun?
Yeah.
Sing it.
Here comes the sun, da da da. Here comes the sun, it's alright.
Again.
This week I speak with Jeremy Morantz. He's just written a book called What Does He Dream About? He tells the story of his late brother Nathan Marantz. For anyone who's been touched by autism, the book is must-read material. Details about the book and where you can buy it are in the show notes of this episode. Jeremy dropped by to tell me all about the book, why he wrote it, and why it's important. Who was Nathan Marantz?
Nathan Marantz was my younger brother. We're 2.5 years apart. I was 5 years old when he was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. Before he was diagnosed, my parents were confused. They didn't know why he was constantly tantruming, why he wasn't acting and developing at the rate of other kids his age. And the diagnosis really cleared things up for them. But what it did for me was it confused me even more. I didn't know what autism meant at the age of 5. I just knew it was different. I didn't know why Nathan didn't like me as a kid, as brothers. My neighbors, 3 brothers, all got along. I didn't have that with my brother, and I didn't understand why. Again, I just knew it was different. As we grew up, I understood what autism meant more and more, and I began to learn to take value out of my brother's differences. Learn to extract the meaning from the way my brother is and the way he was different from other people. In 2016, there was an incident in our backyard pool, and my brother was unconscious for 3 days. He was in the hospital in a medically induced coma. After 3 days, at which point the doctors told us that there's really no other option but to just turn the machines off that were keeping him breathing. And my mom and my dad and I stood over him and watched him take his final breaths. And that's who Nathan Marantz is.
What is autism? I mean, because it means so many things to so many people. So that kid's autistic, but he's doing things, but the other kid who's autistic is not doing the same thing as the other kid who's got autism. And then so many different levels and so many mysteries surrounding this. And I know you're not a doctor.
No.
But to the best of our abilities, like, what did autism mean to you, and what does it mean when you hear that word? Right.
Like you said, I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert. I don't claim to be an expert. What I am an expert on actually is my experiences with my brother. What I do know is that autism is a spectrum. So like you point out, one kid who has autism is functioning at an entirely different level than another. One kid with autism on the spectrum could be operating relatively close to their neurotypically functioning peers in a classroom. Another kid with autism can hardly speak and needs an EA with them at all times in school. That's one of the reasons I wanted to write the book, What Does He Dream About? To ground the reader in what autism can look like when it's pretty severe. And my brother was pretty severe. He was barely verbal, but also barely boring. And I really wanted to expand the general public's idea of what autism can mean, because when you look at movies and TV portrayals of people on the spectrum, it's glorified and it's glamorous. It's Hollywoodified, if you will. Like think Rain Man, Dustin Hoffman, Sheldon Cooper on The Big Bang Theory. I mean, I like that show and I like Rain Man, but to be honest, it's in my experience not an accurate portrayal of what autism can look like.
That's why I blow a gasket every time I'm watching football and I see a promo for The Good Doctor. And I'm like everyone's autism is just a little bit different. And you know, you're a professional of Nathan's autism, the same way I'm a professional of any other autism that I encounter, whether it's just for 6 months or a lifetime. And I think it's good that you bring that to the front and talk about Nathan's autism. So what was it like, and how old were you when you first discovered Nathan's got autism, but what's this going to mean for me and my relationship with him?
That's a good question. It was like slowly but really quickly at the same time. It was always there, and I knew that, but it wasn't until the teen years when my peers were having people over in their basements, and I couldn't because that's where my brother with autism and his 24/7 caregiver lived. And that's when I really started to notice the differences in my life with having a brother with autism. And it's also when I started to resent those differences. Like I'm pretty candid in the book about the fact that there was a lot of time, especially in my teen years, where I didn't want to be there with my brother anymore. He was too much. Having a 24/7 caregiver from the Philippines in our basement was too much for me as a teenager. And at the end of the day, when you boil it down, I was just jealous of everyone else who didn't have to put up with this additional layer of complication and stress in their lives, it was also a challenge to confront that when my brother passed away, because you start to deal with thoughts of guilt and, I should have been nicer to him and I should have appreciated him more while he was here. But the book also recognizes that I did everything I could to appreciate him while he was here too.
Do you think that's one of the reasons that you went into a field like communications? Because you got things to say, you don't know how to say it because you've got a brother who's on the spectrum, and you're thinking of ways to say all these things, and it's really sort of led you down a path because you've always been podcasting, you've always been doing some video, you've always been a very good and strong communicator to the point now you're taking communications. Have you graduated yet, by the way?
I graduated in April.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now you've written a book. And often we find that people who go into this form of communications have things to say, couldn't say it in their younger formative years, and then wind up saying it later. Is there a connection between the two?
Is there a connection between my brother having autism and me going into communications?
Absolutely.
I think I went to communications because I'm bad at math. But that's an interesting, I have to think about that. Maybe, because I grew up with this little brother who couldn't basically communicate, on a basic level. And maybe there's a subconscious, a little subconscious thing there where I'm overcompensating for my brother's lack of communication with my professional communication.
That's a really good point. Your brother's lack of communication led to you becoming an expert in communications.
That's interesting.
And listen, I've worked in radio for so many years, and most of the people that I found out working who wanted to get behind the microphone or to be a copywriter even and create, I found that they had something to say that they couldn't say in their younger years, that they felt the allure of the microphone and wanted to get behind the microphone and express themselves in some way. And in some cases, and this has nothing to do with what you're doing, but being on the radio, they wanted to change their persona. They didn't like something about themselves, so they wanted to become a different character and change themselves.
So they changed their name and talk on the radio?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've also known that a lot of kids with autism, they are particular about foods. A lot of them will gravitate just to salt. A lot of them will just gravitate to one particular thing. But Nathan was very much into salad.
Yeah.
What was the foods he ate? What did he like?
Nathan loved Subway salami, specifically salami from Subway restaurants. It's actually how we became friends with one of our closest family friends who owns a few Subway franchises around the city, because my brother would demand Subway salami and no other salami was fit for him. It's just one of his quirks. People with autism have their funny, adorable things about them. My parents and I walked into a Subway one day and said, can we just have one of the shipping containers of salami? And they said, sure. And we took it home, this huge plastic vac sealed pack of salami. That was just his thing. He would just eat this vac-packed Subway salami out of our fridge. He also loved eating oranges and lemons, just taking a bite out of them like you would an apple. So just the rind right in, and just a huge chunk taken out of a lemon.
And did he make a face? Did he feel that sourness, or did he enjoy the sourness?
He loved it. You would never tell that he was just taking a bite out. It looked like he was just having celery. No reaction.
How's your mom and your dad coped with this? Or does everybody have their own coping strategies for dealing with the loss of Nathan?
You can never know what's going on in someone's head unless you're the one who's in the head. I don't know from a minute-to-minute basis what they're thinking and how they're feeling. I know overall we've come together as a family, and we've leaned on each other and grown with each other and learned to live with a new normal. I'm confident in saying that there isn't a day that goes by that we aren't sad about it, the three of us. Of course, every day you're dealing with it, and every day is its own challenge. But I think that my parents are really proud of the book. I think maybe at first there was some resistance to the idea. It's a really personal thing to deal with the death of a family member, and of course putting it all into a book makes it public. I think there was some subtle pushback. They always support me no matter what, but there was some head scratching when I said that this is what I wanted to do. but they've read it now and they love it. And they're I think we're all happy with the way the book represents my brother and honors his life.
So let's talk about the writing process. And when did you decide to write the book? What did you need to do first? And what were those first few months like?
Okay, so you mentioned I'm in communications.
Yeah.
Every student in this communications program has to conceive of and execute a big professional project. It's called the IPP, Independent Professional Project. So some people will make podcasts. Some people will organize events. Some people will do marketing campaigns, YouTube channel, anything in the world of communications you can think of. I decided to write this book. It's just the only thing that I wanted to do with this project. So the writing process. So what I first had to do actually was I had to write a massive proposal, like a 30-page proposal with a budget and all that stuff, and pitch it to a panel of my instructors who they're all great people, but they're all very upfront people, and they aren't afraid to criticize you. So I had to pitch it to them, and they approved it. And then I found myself in a situation where I had to write a book. The writing process was slow at first. I have never written anything long form. I've written short stories for school. That's about it. I had to learn very quickly how to efficiently, with a time constraint, write this book. At first, I was so focused on making every sentence as perfect as it could be that it would take me 2 hours to write a paragraph, making sure every word was exactly the word that I wanted it to be, the word that was perfect for that situation. And I just had to learn to speed it up, and that's what editing is for. Then I did the whole word vomit thing, and eventually I hit 21,000 words somehow, and then we have a book. Of course, I got an editor to look over it and make sure that there were no typos and make sure all my thoughts were coming through as clearly as possible. I loved the experience, although there were times when I regretted the decision to write a book instead of maybe do a podcast for my IPB. But at the end of the day, I think I fell in love with the writing process, and I hope that there's an opportunity to do it again one day.
Did any of your classmates help you with it at all? Did you share any of it and say, hey, would you read over this chapter and give me your thoughts? Did you, aside from the editor, was there anybody else that you took it to and said, give me your thoughts on this? The
classmates were there for support in a different way, for support in an emotional and mental way, because I'm also writing this book on top of a massive course load. I'm majoring in public relations, PR, which is one of the busier majors in this program. The program's also known, the program's known for its intense course load. So the students were there for support when I truly felt like I wanted to give up on all of it. Those who read drafts early on, I had an advisor on the project. Every student has an advisor. She was fantastic. She pushed me when I needed to be pushed. She would say, okay, you know what? In 2 weeks from now, you have to have 4 chapters done, which was hard for the guy who wanted to spend 2 hours on one paragraph. So without her, the book would have suffered.
Who do you want to read this book?
I wrote the book with 2 objectives in mind. Of course, one, to show people what autism looks like when it doesn't look like Dustin Hoffman and Rain Man. And for families who may be in similar situations and feel like there's no one else out there who can relate to what they're going through, I want them to, through the book, connect to my brother's story, my parents' story, and hopefully just take some refuge in knowing that, other people are out there going through what you are.
The sun, and I say it's all right.